our third and final FMV game for now, The Bunker. Now this was released in 2016 for modern systems, meaning out of the 3 games I've looked at, this one was released earliest on PlayStation 4, but is actually the most recent game. Yet again, it's a limited run physical release, but as far as I'm aware, it's easy to get on PlayStation Network around the world and is pretty affordable. So if you like what you see in this video, this is the easiest one to check out by far. Now I've already said a lot about what to expect from FMV games in general, so let's just jump right in here and see what a modern iteration has to offer. So it's a post-nuclear war Britain. We've seen that kind of thing time and time again, but this time the setting is used in a little bit of a different way. You play as John, the last surviving member of a community who were living within a bunker to protect themselves from the radiation and nuclear bombs. John is the only individual who was born and raised in the bunker. The only other character you interact with outside of flashbacks is your mother, who dies within the first 5 minutes. That's not a spoiler, that's pretty much the plot.
I'll be here. I keep you safe, I promise. No. No, please.
Now, completely isolated, John is left to fend for himself. Going through much more of the story would start to tread into spoiler territory, so I don't want to do that, simply because out of the 3 FMV games I've played, this is the one most heavy on the story. Everything you're seeing here was filmed in a real underground nuclear bunker in Essex that's now a museum and occasionally used as a set. It really adds to the creepy, isolated atmosphere. Take this setting with a much more serious take on the FMV game, and you've got yourself a really interesting psychological horror. No corny acting here. This is full on. Strong performances all around.
We've been up all night. It's been 10 minutes since I had to cover Vera's face.
But is it radiation?
I don't
sickness?
know yet. The nearest proper lab is under 10 tons of radioactive rubble, and I have to make do with a microscope.
It's all right, George. We'll run some tests.
In particular, Adam Brown as the main character, John. He really steals the show, but everyone else deserves to be commended for their performance here. This takes itself a lot more seriously than the other 2 games. Driven by the strong atmosphere, narrative, and a memorable setting and characters, while it's not a particularly long experience, it'll keep you going until the end and you'll want to know what happens next. And while it may be the most story-driven out of the 3 FMV games I've looked at, it's probably the most basic in terms of gameplay. This is a point-and-click adventure at heart, but it's the absolute bare basics. You move your cursor and interact with the environment. There's no specific commands or items to use to speak of. You can pick items up, but there's no inventory or way to actually use them. It's more a case of pick up the key before you can go through the unlocked door. So it's just doing things in the right order sometimes, and that's as close as it gets to being a puzzle of any sort. And even that is pushing it. There's no real puzzles here. Nothing to figure out, no cryptic clues. Camera angles change from a more cinematic view to first person to CCTV. It sounds disorienting at first, but it actually works quite well given the context of the game. Now there are 2 different endings for replay value and some collectibles, but really these aren't worth anything. The collectibles don't unlock any bonus features or footage or anything like that. They're pretty much there for the sake of trophies or achievements. And after beating the game once, if you just press continue, you can play the last section again to get the other ending. So you don't have to worry too much there either. There's not going to be much of a reason to play this game again. There's no chapter select either, so it doesn't really encourage replaying either. This won't be everyone's cup of tea, but it really takes the ball and runs with it as an interactive movie. If you like that idea, you like adventure and story-driven games, or you just want an FMV game that doesn't have a low-budget B-movie horror feel, then this might be for you. Now I can't say or show much more without giving away large elements of the plot, and like I said earlier, that's what this game relies upon. It'd be like me talking through a movie to review a movie. There's nothing more annoying than that, I feel. So we'll leave this one here. It's interesting. After all this time and FMV games becoming a thing of the past, this is the one that takes itself the most seriously. You'd think it would be the ones that were being developed when it was a new and interesting concept, something they were trying to bring in as part of the new generation. But no, those other ones were kinda corny. This is the real deal. So we've had Night Trap, Corpse Killer, and The Bunker. Each one of those incorporates elements of horror in a slightly different way, which I think is pretty cool, and it's interesting to see that that's what the go-to genre seems to be for a lot of FMV games, at least the ones that appear to be the most memorable. Out of those three, it's almost unfair to say it, but I would recommend The Bunker the most to a modern audience. It takes itself seriously in all the right areas. Sure, it's probably the one the most minimal in terms of gameplay, but it's an experience you'll remember. The others, you may not even get through the whole game. This, you probably will. Unless you don't think you'll enjoy the interactive movie style of game anyway, which I guess would mean your best bet would be Corpse Killer, but you probably won't enjoy any FMV game if you don't like this style. Now, I know these are not the only FMV-based games released on PlayStation systems. There are a couple straight off the top of my head I can think of that either are fully FMV or near enough fully FMV, or incorporate a lot of FMV as well. So this isn't the end for FMV games, this is not the definitive guide. I just happen to own these three on PS4, so I figured why not dedicate a small series just to them. And strangely, some of the most fun I've had recording footage has been through these. I think a lot of it's to do with the bonus content, especially on the other two, because I find these games kind of fascinating. I'm the right target audience for them, so I was always going to enjoy all three of them no matter what. I think that'll do for the FMV genre. I'll look at some more in the future, but for now, let's go back to something a little bit more traditional.